Hello. I have the page Antiquated Ideas. Welcome, welcome. Today, this is my first recording. I figured we're going to talk about my most recent blog post. Now, if you don't know, I do have a blog. You can go and visit it. It's literally just antiquatedideas.wordpress.com. There should be a link in my bio as well. But today, what we're going to talk about is eco-nationalism. So, for those of you who don't know, eco-nationalism is kind of the idea that Ted Kaczynski brought about. Now, if you don't know who that is, his name might be a little bit triggering, depending where you are on the spectrum. He was the Unabomber, and in his manifesto, he detailed how industrial society was bad for us, and that idea is something that I really agree with, and a lot of other people are starting to agree with, is that we should return to not quite primalism, but to something earlier, with modern technology kept in mind. So one of the first points would be the idea of sustainability. And by sustainability, I mean the use of technology so that we're not constantly tearing down natural resources. So countries like the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, a lot of other European countries, and even in the US here, they use things such as hydroelectricity. They use solar panels. I'm not going to mention where I live, but I do live somewhere close to Babcock Ranch. If you don't know what Babcock Ranch is, it's one of the first, if not the first, I'm not sure, town that's set up entirely on solar electricity. It's supposed to be entirely sustainable. It's kind of out in this marsh. It's a cool idea, but they get a little freaky with the technology there. So look that up on your own time. But it's also about, hydroelectricity, windmills, using solar panels, things like that, but to a much larger degree than are being used currently. Another huge point for this, obviously, would be the preservation of the environment. So no matter where you live, I mean, if you live in the desert or if you live in a forest, those things are beautiful. Those are God's work right there that you're looking at. And increasingly, those things are being taken away from us by major corporations, by our government, even smaller builders that are trying to develop these large groups of homes. I can't think of the word right now, forgive me. But the aim is to sort of get rid of that, to go back to the idea of being on the frontier or living in a village or on a farm. And I mean, I remember, when I was growing up, going to the farm was one of my favorite things. I only did it a few times, but it was still one of my favorite things to do. And it's just nice, it's just relaxing to get out into that nice fresh air and to get outside, feel the sun on you, even when it rains, to feel the rain, that's it has its own smell, it has its own feeling, it's something unexplainable, and those things are being polluted, which is a major problem for us. So another idea involved in eco-nationalism would obviously be part of the name there, nationalism, and that's the idea that we're proud of who we are, right? We're proud of the country. No matter what country you're from, you be proud of that country. Here in the United States, it would be comparable to being a patriot, right? You're proud of the USA. You're proud of what we've done. You're proud of who we are and what we stand for. So this is that same idea, right? That we're proud of ourselves. We're proud of our culture, and we're proud of our heritage, and we want to keep that for the future, for our children, for our children's children, for anyone that's going to come after us. So following that is something I believe personally is the U.S. Constitution. And I would imagine that eco-nationalism would fall very similarly in line with the Constitution, especially considering that at the time that the Constitution was written, there were only a few major cities, and frontiersmen or homesteading was still a very popular idea. So the rights that would be involved with eco-nationalism would fall in line with the Constitution. Individual rights, your God-given rights. Especially, the focus would be on the rights to your own property and to your own protection, right? And the protection of not just your opinion, not just what you want to say, but yourself and your property and the things that you've done. Now, today, and this is completely another topic to talk about for another day, but today, politicians, and they always have been to an extent, but they've been trying to take away guns more and more and more. And it's to the point where, if this were the 1700s, our ancestors, they probably would have been dragging these people out and skinning them alive because of what they're doing. But that's beside the point. I just wanted to make it clear that, that's those rights, the civil liberties that we enjoy now are something that we want to continue. But what we do want to do is reduce the focus on massive consumerism. We don't want these major factories churning out, tons and tons of products that we don't need. I mean, I have a phone, right? Who doesn't at this point? And I enjoy that phone. But would I say that it's absolutely necessary for my life? No, not at all. It's not necessary for anyone. In fact, up until recently, all that I've been using my phone for is communication and music. And now, of course, I'm using it to help write things, to help record things, although I'm recording this on a computer right now. But it's the idea that we don't need all of these products that are just completely useless. I mean, sometimes I look at the consumer market and like in Japan as an example. Now I know that's a different culture and it's something I don't understand, I'm missing about them, but they have all these entirely useless products. It's like we're putting so many resources, so many natural resources into that. And this leads me into another point, is that of repopulation. And by repopulation, I mean that ancient man knew that there was a balance between what he consumed and what he put back. So if you lived in an area where deer were popular, okay, and for 20, 40, 60, or 100 years or more, deer were hunted extremely, often, then those deer would eventually disappear. It's a resource, and it's non-renewable to an extent. Forgive me, actually, that's my rabbit that's jumping around if you hear that in the background. So the idea is that these resources that we're taking away, trees being a huge one, deforestation. Look at Germany after World War II. Germany went through millions and millions of trees, and it was hard for them to replant them. And in fact, you can go and look at some of the forests in Germany now, and you look at the trees, and they're all planted in these perfectly straight lines. It's kind of odd. But the idea here is that we want to replant just as much as we use, if not more. We want nature to thrive. We don't want these big concrete, brutalism. We just taking over everything. Living in Florida, something I see often is miles and miles of concrete pavement, and to me it's a nightmare. It's depressing, I'm not much of a fan of the ocean. I don't like going boating or anything, but I do love hiking, and I used to live in Michigan. So when I lived in Michigan, it was just every day, it made me feel good to go outside, whether it was snowing, raining, sleeting, hail, sunny, whatever. It made me feel good to go outside and breathe in the trees and just know that, that's what God put here for us, and it's good for you. So, one last point that I kind of want to make in this introductory video is that of food sources. So, a huge concern for us and a lot of the leftists also, although I think that they might overreact to the situations. A lot of the leftists and us, we can be in agreement that the way animals are treated is not right, especially when it comes to our food sources. So finding something that's more sustainable, and I know I had mentioned that before, but this is another idea of that sustainability. Finding something that's sustainable, especially when it comes to food, is very important for us, because animals are another piece of God's work, and they're alive, they have feelings, and even plants have feelings. The earth itself has feelings. You can debate with me on that however much you like, but that's what I believe, and I think that if you open your eyes to it, that's something that's very clearly seen. But the treatment that these major corporations, like the meat market as an example, the meat market is just disgusting towards animals. I can't even properly articulate the way that I feel about it, because it's so disgusting. The way that they just raise these animals to immediately be slaughtered, it's like these animals have no purpose in life other than to die. And I suppose that you could argue that that is the life of an animal, especially a farm animal, something like a chicken or a cow. But they don't have to live their lives in these cramped, awful conditions where they're constantly sick and they're being mutilated and tortured, and they have all these genetic modifications. No matter how much you want to argue about it, I think that these animals know that there's something wrong with them at that point. And they're not happy with their lives, and a lot of the ways that they put down these animals too is just wrong. It's not the way that it used to be out on the farm. When you're on a farm, you grow up with these animals and you form a connection with these animals, and when you have them in these major markets and these literally factories where they just herd all these, I'm sure you've probably seen the pictures of how they raise chickens, thousands of chickens just in these barns. It's disgusting how they have feeder that they just throw all over the ground. The chickens are dying all over each other. They have to fight to survive. And why? Just because fucking Tommy wants his goddamn chicken nuggets? It's ridiculous. I'm not saying that you can't have those things in life, because they're important. They're natural for us to have in life. Having a steak, there is absolutely nothing wrong with. Now, having a support for the way that things are currently is incorrect. And so, not to go on that rant that I did there, but I kind of did mean to. The whole aim of this video is to introduce you to me and some of my quote-unquote policies, I guess, and my beliefs, and hope that this helps to spread the word of what we believe in and helps people understand where we're coming from, because we're not coming from a place of hate. The media likes to make it out like we're these big hateful people, we're sitting here on stockpiles of guns and we're just waiting to kill people, but that's not how it is. We want a peaceful life just the same that anyone else would want a peaceful life. And so I hope that if there's anything that you guys can take away from that, it's that we want to return to a more natural, peaceful, and fulfilling life, the way that God intended us to live. And no matter how you view God, excuse me, I think that close relationship with nature is how God intended us to live. So, anyway, if you'd like to support me, I have a Patreon. I have a PayPal. You can check those out. They're in my bio. This is my first time doing anything like this, so once I figure it out more, obviously it'll be easier to do. But also, please check out my blog if you feel like it. I write things on there that I might not talk about, or I might talk more in depth here about things that I write there. And also, the blog explains my other interests as well. So, thank you guys.